Hello, and thank you for joining us once again on Interesting Individuals. I have been privileged to be able to say that for quite a few years, and the focus of this segment of Interesting Individuals is looking back on the early years and early days of Channel 27. Channel 27 turns 15 this year. It started in 1983, and the station was located at 519 Franklin Square. And with me now are three of the people who claim to have been involved in the pioneering of the station. Of course, Martin Beakley, who has been the station director all these years, and he's been able to tolerate me for most of that time. He was with the station when it opened up in 1983. Janice Meyer-Zorn, who was a part-time employee when the station opened up, and Dave Hoppy, who was an employee at the library. You were the assistant director at the time, and you played a big hand in getting the station going, and you did some programs. So a big thank you to all three of you for joining me on the program. Let's get a brief history, Martin, on how Channel 27 got started.
This is the oral history portion of the program.
Yeah. So how brief? You want to do it real quick?
That's what brief is, yeah.
Let's take our time.
Well, I remember like I first moved out to this area. No. Let's see. Well, we were just talking like it really goes back to an organization called the Public Access Workshop. And that started probably in 1980, 81 or 82, I'm not sure.
81, I'd say.
At least a year before we opened, because we opened in May of 1983, but we'd had the Public Access Workshop going for about a year.
Yeah, it took I think 2 years from the time we started the Public Access Workshop to the time we actually got to move in. Because
So this, this took place at the library then, or no?
yeah, well, the city, we knew that that Cox Cable, which was the cable franchise at that time, had as part of its franchise agreement guaranteed that it would provide a public access studio and public access facilities. And no one in the city was coming forward basically to claim that. And but Cox wasn't going to just build a public access studio unless somebody came up with a plan for it. So Martin, Jan, and I got together and began to concoct the idea of the Public Access Workshop, which we incorporated as a not-for-profit. We allied it with the library, and then were able to negotiate with Cox to get the studios set up.
Jan, what did you do at the library at that time?
I was in the audiovisual department working with Dave, part-time there, and checking out videos and doing that kind of thing.
Martin and I were playing tennis.
All right.
I knew Dave, and I think I met Dave. I had done some work with a guy named Claire Kohler, who started a company, a video production company, and this was way back in late 70s, early 80s. There weren't too many things like video production companies, and he had decided he wanted to try and start one, and called it KOE Video. And one of the things that I did, he started this company and let people practically do anything they wanted to with the equipment. Well, I worked with Dave, and we made a video about the library.
Oh, okay.
And that would have been about 1981, I would guess.
Yeah.
So that was how I got, I think, some connection with the library. And then through 81 and 82, when we began to form the Public Access Workshop, we had it was basically what we did was organize people, because we had a lot of people who said they really were interested in doing public access.
And let's move on to when you moved into the station, which was at 519 Franklin Square, and we were always next to Maxine and Heine's restaurant. That's what everybody would say. And it was towards the end of 1983 that the station opened up and began to do programming, and let's talk about that.
We had a wonderful party.
Yeah. Yes, I remember that.
We hooked everything up, and we drank champagne in the studio.
It was really a wonderful launching of this. I remember the next day, Martin and I were sitting back, exhausted. We sat back in some chairs. I mean, we didn't have all the furniture in the place or anything. We put the tapes on because we taped the whole evening's activities, and we sat back and watched the whole thing.
Of everybody getting drunk with the champagne.
Yeah, well, there was it.
Can either of you or any of you remember the very first program that ever played on the channel?
I'm wondering, it might have been Jan's program on the John Lloyd Wright Tour of Homes.
I believe it was.
Okay.
Oh, that's right.
That was one of the first programs. I think that first week we had that, and we had a program done by a man named Jack Givens from the Swanson Center. He was one of our, and I don't know where Jack came from. He just heard about it, and he just popped in, like practically right after we opened, popped in and said, I want to make some programs about, mental health and issues related to that. And he was working for the Swanson Center.
And just think, he started before I was down there.
That's right.
Hard to believe, but it's true.
Mental health, yeah. But I remember I remember reading an article in the News Dispatch about the TV station getting underway, and I said I'd keep that in mind, and then I eventually came down and got involved. But I remember in those early days, the first few years there, we would have shows on like just for 2 hours during the day.
Yeah.
And it was very limited, and a lot of people still didn't have cable TV in the 80s at that time.
That's right, yeah.
Because you'd tell them, well, I'm doing something at this cable TV station. Well, I don't even have cable TV, so I can't even get it.
Just a point, we used to get quite a few calls back then. And this, I mean, it's funny now, but back then, it was funny back then, but still, I mean, how many times did we get a call where somebody would be calling in and say, yes, I've read about the library's TV channel, but I tell you, I have turned my antenna every direction, and I cannot pick your station up. It's very cloudy, very snowy. You'd think a channel that close to my house I'd be able to get good reception with it.
It's true.
And we try and explain, how you get our channel.
And I remember, though, it was Jan, if I'm not mistaken, you were just part-time down there. The
Initially,
station was
yeah.
only open like maybe 4 or 5 days out of the week, and there was the bulletin board on when there weren't programs.
Right, yes.
Because when I would tell people that station was on, they would say, well, all I see is that bulletin board and so forth, but...
Brother Ugma, fought with lions.
Oh, yeah. We did get, I remember that was a message. Come your brother Ugma talk about his fight with tigers and lions.
Well, let's move on. All three of you were involved with doing shows at Channel 27 in the early years.
Right.
And let's get to one that the two of you did, which is a classic, and we do have a segment of it here, called Tug and Bug Laugh at Death. And whichever one of you wants to claim that one, please tell me.
Well, it truly was a collaboration.
I think Jan was the inspiration, but me and Dave did a lot of the work on it.
Yeah, she...
Yeah. I think, just having Jan around really inspired us.
Inspired
to,
Tug and Bug.
And it was about two Frenchmen, and I forget what they did.
Oh, that's right, it was two Frenchmen, yeah.
They were two Frenchmen.
That had met in Paris back in the 50s.
And they laughed at death.
They laughed at death because of just...
Traveling through time and having incredible adventures.
All right. Well, we have a clip from Tug and Bug Laugh at Death, and let's see what the two of them are doing.
It's gotta be. Up here? Yep. How do we get up there? Think hard. Think up. We think up. I'm thinking up, but I'm thinking down now. No, down. But I think backwards down is up, up is down. Down. Think down. Whoa. Down. Hold it. Down. Oh, that's too hard. I can't make it. I don't know how. Come on. I don't know how. Come on. I can't. We've got to.
Which one was Tug and which one was Bug?
He was.
He was who? What?
Well, Tug and Bug, like we said, they were Frenchmen.
Yeah.
And they didn't stay in Michigan City very long, but they would come in occasionally and videotape, some of these exciting adventures that they got involved in.
Yeah.
Where are they at now? Whatever happened to them?
Tug and Bug, I think they're in Polynesia now.
All right.
We
They had a separation for a while, but then I heard they were getting back together.
There could be a reunion tour. I've heard that there could be the Tug and Bug reunion tour. I've seen a T-shirt, but I haven't had the pleasure of actually getting a chance to see those two gents.
I really miss
They're
them,
characters.
They looked like it.
Yeah.
Climbing and they did that, if I'm not mistaken, to pay their utility bill.
Yeah,
Then
they were
climbed up there.
conscientious guys. I mean,
Yes,
doing
yeah.
it,
But what was the toughest part about getting the station underway for the first year or so? Any of your comment?
Well, I think, I think it was basically getting people to understand that they could actually participate. I think probably one of the reasons why the studio has succeeded where so many others have not is because it's connected with the library. And because it was connected with the library, we entered into this thinking from the very start that public access would really be about giving people the tools and teaching them how to make their own television programs, getting them to really participate in the programming. And it was hard, I think at first, if I remember correctly, to get people to actually feel like they would participate. I mean, I know we kept getting calls from Martin and Jan to go out and tape programs for people. And that was not what our intention was. And, you know, I think it was somewhat difficult to really kind of convey to people right off the bat that this whole enterprise was based upon their participation and not our production for it.
Sure. And who were some of the people you remember, like towards the end of 1983, you mentioned Jack Given, and into 84 that came down and did some programs?
A lot of people that you've had on
Yeah.
that are here
People
today.
Yeah, yeah.
Might have some guests on that hopefully will talk about some
Yeah,
shows. But
people that will be on this show, as well as people like Jan Hosna, who I guess hasn't shown up today yet, but
Exercising.
doing Exercising with Style and
Yeah.
Grace.
I remember a
Grace,
gentleman,
I forget her name, Grace
Grace Freeman.
Grace Freeman.
There was a
Yeah.
gentleman named Rick Glassman who did the show on The Naturalist, the nature show.
Yeah, we did have, we were talking about that earlier today, the state park, the Indiana Dunes State Park, and the Washington Park Zoo did some programs real early on, and we were talking about how I remember somebody happened to be editing. We just had a little editing room over there. It was just practically like a closet, and you'd go into this closet and close the door, and you'd have a little editing system in there, and that's where people edited because it was fairly quiet. But we had, I think it was the zoo that
The zoo, they
came
brought
over.
Animals in from
And-
time to time.
Really?
Yeah. Yes,
So that one
yeah.
day we had some tigers and lions, little
Yeah,
cubs.
Little cubs. that-
In the
Alright.
studio, we're taping them, but we had a couple of deer, you know, regular-sized deer that they had brought over to show off.
Gosh.
Well, we just let them roam around the studio, but one of the deer kind of pushed the editing room open and walked into whoever was editing at the time. I remember kind of peeking, and they kind of looked up, and they see this deer standing.
That would surprise me too. I remember about
Didn't
the
say a
old
word, just
Didn't
went
say
right
a
on
word.
editing, yeah.
Remember the old Franklin Street station? We had the blue block. Remember the blue block?
big
where
blue
we'd set
block.
stuff on there. Then we had the blue curtain.
That's right, everything was
And then
blue, yeah.
we had the old ladder and the lamps and everything. We'd always have to move something around. Then we had camera operators, the public. People would come down and volunteer
That's
being
right.
camera operators. And then they'd put the headsets on,
Headsets,
and then
yeah.
they would zoom in and zoom out. And it was the square. You had to park, and you had to walk into the square area and come on. And
Well, you
That's
mentioned
right, it
something
was-
about volunteers, and that was something that I worked on a little bit too, was getting volunteers to come in and you know, man the cameras and do things like that. And very essential part of all these productions.
Right.
Remember our first awards? Our
Yes.
first anniversary? We had everybody
Fred's.
down in the studio.
Yeah, we had a few of those.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I believe I missed the first one, but I remember we had several of them. I do have a copy of one of the award shows. I believe I'm handing out an award to someone, but we had 3 or 4 of them, and they used to be down at the library.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, they were a headache for you because you had to take all the equipment down there. It took like a day or two, and you had to close down the station and take all the
Yeah.
equipment there and move it back. We did it like on a Friday night.
Well, one of the things that has changed, the places, the amount of programming has grown tremendously. And it means we don't really have the time sometimes to do some of these special
Oh,
programs. And the
absolutely.
staff doesn't have the time
Sure.
to say, let's have an awards
Yeah.
program, and let's spend a couple of weeks putting it together and stuff.
Yeah.
We had time to do that back then.
Oh, yeah. But I have
it's a trade-off.
Right, I have a segment here from I think the 1986 award show,
Oh.
and I think what I remember here. Look carefully because you'll see people in the audience sitting, and you'll see like camera people. So let's take a look at what goes on here.
Dawn Grammels.
I'd like to say, come on, Curry, everybody over here. I'm so amazed, like, I didn't think I'd be first, and, like, I didn't think I'd get anything. I mean, my show needs work. I'm just, 14 and a half. I mean, I have to thank my crew a lot. It's their show, really. We all work on it. We all do the writing of the scripts, in which this was, the Thanksgiving play was Bree's idea, and the Christmas